You've really got three ways to render. One is on the desktop, just with whatever speed your computer has. Another is with Enscape, which uses additional graphics hardware called a graphics card from NVIDIA or Radeon that can make things happen practically instantaneously. And then we also have a number of cloud rendering options for features that aren't available through either of those mediums. And that's what I want to go over today. We looked a little bit last time about the luminance values, getting actual foot candle values from your lighting or for the sun. And I'd like to explore pretty much everything else that Revit can do with cloud rendering, where it has much more computing power that it can bring to it. One of the drawbacks that you as students especially need to be aware of is with the free student account, your priority on the computer time there is less than for the paying customers. Something that might take me as a subscribing designer 5 minutes will take you half an hour, and you'll just say email me when it's done and come back. Okay, anyway, so we're working with rendering the cloud today. There are a couple of significant advantages to it. Well, compared to the desktop anyway, Enscape is sort of a separate little deal. We'll be within a week or two. First of all, you can tell it to render multiple views at one time. With the desktop, you just, whatever view is there, you hit render and do it. With the cloud version, you say, I would like to render, click, 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 click these 5 views and hit render and turn off the computer and go home and get some sleep and then come back in the morning and they're all done. So that's really a great benefit. One drawback when we get to animations is animations are desktop rendered, not in the cloud. And I'm sure it's because it is highly computationally intensive. You know, if you're doing a 20-second walkthrough or something or other, and it takes 2 minutes to render each frame, it has to do 2 minutes for every frame along there, which is, 3 hours or something or other to render 20 seconds. And if every student in America was doing this for free, it would just take, all the computers in the world couldn't keep up with this. So that stays local. And really that has been solved by Enscape and the graphics cards in there, which can essentially do them far faster than it can be done just on the desktop. Just a couple other things at the end of term. Again, the student load really cranks up on this, submit it at night and come back in the morning. And also, if you're trying to get pretty quick results any time of the year, after about 10 o'clock seems to work better at night. And I think that's when the West Coast design firms all go home. And so there aren't people in offices still doing renderings. That said, the quality of the light is simply better than it is with the desktop rendering. I only ever use like draft to preview stuff and medium to do it. I never go to best or whatever or high. It just takes too long and it's all spotty and I can't figure out how that's really supposed to work unless you let it go for hours and hours, and who has time for that? With the medium detail in Revit, you sometimes get sort of banded colors instead of smooth gradations. Gray to slightly darker to slightly darker. And if you zoom in on the JPEG or whatever, you can see that banding where Revit just said it's close enough, we'll do them all the same. And with the cloud rendering, it's a very smooth thing. And it seems to deal much better with, well, if we're rendering this scene right here, looking out the windows, it could easily be entirely washed out outside with the sunlight on it in a desktop rendering. And in the cloud rendering, there's a much better balance between bright and dark areas, so they all feel lit, but not huge areas of contrast, or some parts in deep shadow and some parts in blasted out highlights. So experiment with that and see how it goes. I'm just taking this view here. We can go to a view render settings, and this is important. You need to do this first before you even think about cloud rendering, because the lights that you set up for each scene, which ones are turned on, which ones are turned off, where the sun's coming from, this is inherited by the cloud model. When you render this view in the cloud, it will use these settings. As with regular desktop renderings, any kind of view can only be rendered if it's a 3D view. Elevations, sections, they don't happen. You can shade them, you can do stuff, but rendering is a matter of a 3-dimensional view, light and objects and materials. So this view, we can either go to view render to set the render settings, or we can go down to properties, camera, render settings and stuff. And something I would suggest here to preview how the sun is going to be entering the space, if indeed it is to go down to graphic display options and turn shadows and cast shadows on. So that if the sun's coming in the window, we'll see where it hits the floor. If it's not coming in the window and we want it to, we can change the sun angle to where it goes. So let's look at that. So cast shadows. So with cast shadows turned on here in this shaded view, I can say, I thought the sun was coming in through the window, but it's not. Let me go back to the plan view and just understand where I forget where the sun comes from by default, but what we need to know is that we're in a plan view. When we're setting what's called the azimuth of the sun, that's the angle from clockwise from the north to where we want it coming in. So I really want to be coming in, 0, 9, let's say about 75 degrees. It'll come in this way. So I'll go back to the 3D view, go to render settings. And then here under sun settings, what we don't want to do is to keep having the sun coming in over our right shoulder, regardless of which way we're facing. We want to be able to say relative to north. That's how I'm doing this. So I'm going to say, don't do relative to view. I want my azimuth, as I said, to be like 75 degrees. And I'll leave the altitude that's above the horizon at 35, just so it'll come in pretty far. Apply. Okay. Okay, so that's got a little drama in there. The floor was, blank. So these sun settings are the ones that will apply in any rendering you do from this view, whether it's on the desktop or in cloud rendering. Enscape will start out with this, but with Enscape you can just drag your mouse and the sun moves around, so that it almost doesn't apply. So if we just do a quick render, and while that's happening, okay, well there's that. There's our light fixtures. That's fun. So I'm going to save this, and we'll just be able to compare the way that the desktop and this one go for sort of the medium normal resolution. I'm going to just save this out to a JPEG, export, stick it on the desktop so I can find it. Render demo desktop JPEG. Okay. And what I sort of notice is how washed out this is, how washed out these are, and there being no detail out to the outside. I'm not sure I had a background turned on. But yes, I had a background turned on with a few clouds, which if we were in an exterior view would be a muted gray blue sky. Okay, so there's that. So let's just, same scene, let's go to rendering cloud. Once you've seen this, you don't have to see it again. Believe me, I've seen it before. And once you're out of here and paying for stuff, I strongly recommend that instead of paying for desktop rendering, pay for a graphics card for your computer. I just spent $360 today buying 120 flex credits that I can use for you. I do it all for you. The small images don't cost anything. Let's talk about what we have. We have, just working from the top down, says select 3D views. By default, it selects the current view, but you can pick as many of the 3D views there as you want and have them crank out. All the ones you pick will render to the same sized image and the same quality image. So if you have a bunch of large images and a bunch of ones you want large and ones you want small, you can do the large ones all at once to a big multi-megapixel image, and the smaller ones could all be small and not have to take up all that time. So you sort of balance you sort of have a time budget. I have a money budget, but it boils down to the same thing. The time money thing, you have to find your balance for that. I guess they figure students have all the time in the world and have no money, so they just sort of base on that. So we have, we can pick a number of views. We can pick these 4 basic types of image. When we go into re-render, we've got a few more options, but these are the 4 basic ones we have. The still image, a panorama, which is the kind I showed you before, where you, in a browser, you open it and you can look around. A stereo panorama, you can export it to a couple of formats to use with VR headsets. And the illuminance model that we did last week, where we get the foot candle values for things. I'm going to take this down to a small image. And the way this works is, whatever these proportions are of this image, let's just say X and Y, and maybe my actual image is 7 inches by 5 inches as it is there on the screen. At this point, cloud rendering pretty much ignores those inches, and it just decides we're gonna in that same ratio of 5 to 7, we're gonna put up enough pixels to have a 250,000 pixel image in those 7 to 5 proportions, which in this case might work out to 600 by 450 pixels or so for preview purposes. We can eventually go in and set exactly how big we want it to be, but for right now we have a quarter of a megabyte of a megapixel, 1, 2, and then the maximum is 16. But we'll just do this one and say start rendering. And so that doesn't happen on the screen. This is all happening up in the cloud, and this turn in the cloud. This turns on. Well, here's what's happening. The whole model is being uploaded at this point. I mean, all of it in its entirety. Geometry, materials, lights, everything it needs to render. So if we decide to render this again and haven't made any changes to geometry, materials, or lights, we don't have to upload everything again. It's there. We can just go to the website and say re-render bigger or higher resolution or something or other. So go up here and let's say render progress. You'll say we're waiting for 10 minutes. Well, it's working here. And then we can go to, so there's that one we did here, a couple of tests I was running on. And we just get this indicating it's happening. And you can see it figured out that little size ends up being a 500 by 330. There we go, okay. After we've done a quick render then and made sure that it's okay, then we can come back and set it to exactly the dimensions that we want to have. Okay, let's just compare this. Let's go to download. Download. Okay, we have a couple of choices here. We have the basic PNG, JPEG, and TIFF. I would pretty much always save these as JPEG. EXR, I'm not sure what that is. That's new. EXR. And then we also have this option, if you're saving it in PNG format, to have the background be transparent. So instead of white, this would be clear pixels. So when we take it into Photoshop, we can just slide a background image in behind it. And so, for one square, it doesn't make any difference, but that's multiple shaped things with plants in front of them and stuff. It's a really, really handy thing to look ahead towards because it does it really well. And anything you do manually or with the magic wand tool in Photoshop is, you wish you'd done it here. So let's just say, we'll just save it as a JPEG since we're comparing. And it's going to ask me where, downloads, cheese, opened file. Oh, look at and this will tell us then what folder it's in. Okay, so that's just in the regular downloads folder. And as we look at each of these, we can see that the name of this image is the name of the file, the date, and the time down to, the nearest minute or millisecond or something or other. I don't know what. So you really never get two with the same, and then the name of the view as well. So date, time, and view. So if I come to it again, it'll be identical, except it'll say, 03 p.m. or whatever it happens to be. It's got to be hours, minutes, seconds, but I don't know where the 6 comes in. Anyway, they're unique. You don't have to worry about them. Let me copy that. Copy, go back to my desktop, paste. So there's that one from the cloud. And here's this one that we just did. So just looking at them, it seems like there are a couple of things. The lighting here, these are very specular sort of highlights, like on the roughness of the wood here and here. This gets all pretty much smoothed out. Better highlight detail over here. Get them about the same size. This is altogether richer to me, just in terms of the tonality of the wood and stuff like that. And that, so a couple of things. That was with the smallest image size and just the standard level of quality. So this was 3D view one, a still image, standard. Oh, and we have two choices here. The final takes like twice as long and gives a noticeably nicer image quality when we're through with it. You can experiment with that on your own. The size, we did the small. And exposure, I've never been able to quite separate out the difference between advanced exposure and final render quality. They both make it better and take longer, but it's hard to tell for me just which is dependent on which. So, and they both take longer and cost me more when I'm doing that. Well, let's just render it again while we're here to get that whole process working smoothly. I can go up here. I could have just gotten a browser and gone to this location here. And that's the same for all of us. And that's in the notes. It's a link in the PDF. But what we see here going on here is each project, instead of each image being spread across the thing, each project is condensed down to the most recent image here on top. And you can see this one has two images, and one of them is about halfway through. Number 2 is about halfway through being complete. So that's reasonable. So I'll just go to view project, and that's when we'll see the 2 images that we've done. Click on there, and then we see the one that we did, and then this new one coming up. So I can cancel this one, frankly. We don't actually need to do that. I'm going to cancel that one because it's just the same as the other. Okay, so once we've done this little tiny image, just done it once just to make sure it's generally what we're looking for, without taking too much time. Like we might want to move the sunlight, we might want to turn some of the lights off. Then we have choices for re-rendering. Just re-rendering as a still image, we have these options. We can optimize it for different media on the outside. There's no point doing a huge image if it's going to be for cell phones. If we want it for print, these are standard sizes for print. For video, they're different standard formats for screen sizes. Then the interesting thing for me is print just gives you standard sizes here. When we go to custom, we can say, okay, if we know that it wants to be 24 by 15 inches, and we know that we want really high quality is 300 dots per inch, really very acceptable for presentation like this where people aren't sort of up scrutinizing close, is 150 dots per inch. So 24 times 150 and 15 times 150 equals some number of pixels that we can set over here. The problem being the maximum resolution is 4,000 by 4,000. So anybody have a calculator? Give me that really quick. So I can set up, if that's how big I want to print it at that resolution, I can set those dimensions specifically over here. And normally, if I wanted to increase this one to, let's say 3,600, then this one will come along with it. They scale proportionally, but in this case we won't do so. So we'll unlock the proportions and enter a height independent of the width. Then you could unlock them and set this one to be 2250, and it will take a couple of rows of pixels off the top and the bottom to make that fit. So custom aspect ratio, final takes it up to 8. And at this point, those guys are costing me $3 a piece. So $24, is this worth it? It might be worth it to my company, but I would make sure I can bill that to a client before I would spend $24 on this. And I would make a bunch of little free ones first to make sure it was just what I wanted. So, and then I could render, but I'm not going to do that. Cancel. Oh yeah, here we are. So that's the sort of the size thing. So that's just re-rendering. Or we have these other options for formats to re-render it in, which we can pick either here or here. This is render as a panorama, and that's the one we saw of the kitchen. Same deal. We have a couple options, and the first one here, environment, is what do we see out the windows, And there are a couple of these just built in. Let's just try one. Let's just try the let's try the seaport. I don't know. They don't have a cityscape, which is ridiculous. Anyway, so we'll try that. Seaport, that didn't cost me anything. Render quality standard. We'll just leave all these the same way. And the width, we have a couple of standard choices. Ooh, we're not doing that. How big can I get for free? Okay, so we're going to render this to a panorama, and we're going to have a couple of choices about those, basically involving the format. So let's just look at what that's going to be. Going to render this terrible little image as a panorama. Let's have a bunch of blank walls. Okay, render, and it'll think about it, and it'll clue me in over here that I've got this little panoramic view. These are not coded the regular renderings, but each of the others will have this little icon in the bottom corner to let you know what we're getting. And we'll be able to preview the panorama here on the screen. And then when we download it, it's just an HTML file that comes down. It's easy. Click on it with the browser and you can just see it around. And while we're waiting, I have a graphic design assignment for you. It's 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper on the walls in the downstairs corridors, just with tape or something that say, why doesn't this look like an art building? Okay, so we've got a little progress bar here. We've got another couple of minutes. Okay. Okay, so here we are. So what's interesting is the way these are put together. Well, you'll see in a minute. If we go to download, I'm going to do a couple of these because they're really fun. There are 4 images. It's like you're inside a box and there's 4 images around you on the walls, and they might be laid out just 1, 2, 3, 4. It might be laid out as a cross, and then the equirectangular one is really fun. It's this long, stretchy, swoopy image. I'll do all of those just for fun, so you know what you're doing, and they might be a really interesting way to present a project too. We'll just see. So, Pano as cube. Okay, so that one, that's the. Oh, these are all zip files. I'll just download them all first and then zip them later on. Let's cross. Okay, that was that one. There's that. And then last, so I've done these, now also download as a HTML file. Okay, so now we'll just go into that folder. So here's why the HTML is preferable. It's one file. You just double click it. Your browser opens. And here I'm just in my browser. I'm not in the Revit thing. This is just my regular browser here. And it's not great for print presentation, but it's great for online presentations. Show the whole space. I mean, that's really pretty nice, you know. But so what's going into this, we'll leave that up. These are all zip files, so we'll have to we have to extract, open the zip file, extract everything. Oh, actually, here's what I want to show you. So basically, in this case, where we're looking at the one that's a strip of images, we have a bunch of images like this, and then the HTML file somehow magically maybe includes this viewer that sort of then takes this image and wraps it back around the camera so you see it. But isn't that a cool way to present a project? I mean, I don't know, you know, what you're going to do with it. Let's just take a look at some of the others in here. Like, yeah, I don't know what the differences on these are. So that's that. That's kind of the coolest one. Where did they go? Okay, so that was the strip one. This is the cross, where it's the same idea. It just, here you're truly inside a box. And there's, if you like, a lens inside. And then And then that was that one, the cross. This is the strip. You really have to explain that to the people who are watching, but it's just a different way to view it, you know. And that's one. I think that's again 6 images as opposed to 4, and then the strip. Oh, and then this was just the JPEG that we that was the one that we saw before. Yeah. Anyway, so it's that easy to get a panoramic image in here. So enough of that. So that's the stereo working or not working. Okay, so here was rendering a still image to the sizes that we want. Here's rendering the panorama that we know works regularly, but the stereo needs further research. And with the solar study, you can either take a day and have the sunlight move through the space from dawn till dusk and create a frame every 10 minutes or something and watch the sun move across the space. Or you can set it up for like at 9 o'clock in the morning every day for a year and just see how the light is different in the morning, what your kitchen will be like from winter into spring. Illuminance turntable is interesting. My experience with this only works, it creates a rotatable object on the screen. And I have not been able to get it to work at all reasonably with interiors. It works fine with the whole building at a time. So let me just try that, but I'm going to have to go back to well, let's just try it. Let's see what happens. Going to cost me 36 frames. Oh, this will be an animation. Nah, not worth it. This is where Enscape really comes into play. Does all this stuff locally. And then once you got too many of these, you can delete them. Whatever is the current one, you can get rid of it here. There's also open rendering on phone, which I just tried, and it works great. Scan it, send this to people. This is the rendering hub for all the Autodesk products all over the world. For AutoCAD, for 3D Studio, for Maya, for Revit, all those. So over here, we can share our images to that group. Okay, so how do we get into that whole gallery thing? Here we are. It was on the hamburger menu here. My renderings, that's where we were, gallery. Just all sorts of stuff people have been doing, but you know, just all sorts of cool, you know, stuff people are doing. And sometimes you see it be from somebody from University of Cincinnati, sometimes it's from Dar es Salaam, which is all over the place. Prostheses, drone, kaleidoscope. And some of them have the animations in there, which is really pretty fascinating. Anyway, so once you have something worth sharing that you would like to share, just hit the share button. And I don't know, let's just see how. Oh, so it tells you who it is. Anyway, so that's the share. Resources, rendering help, videos, all that. Oh, let me try that turntable view, because that is sort of interesting. We need to get back to Revit, 3D exterior view. Let's put some more windows in it just for fun. So the first step, we can't pick one of the animation options or the most complex options from the initial screen. First, we'll just go and just do a tiny little one. Check my light settings first. Graphic display options, lighting. Here's where this relative to view setting really matters. If I leave that checked, the sun will like always be coming from this direction, no matter how the building is turned. So as each face comes into view, it will catch the light, and the shadow will always go in the same direction on the screen. I would like to have the sense that the sun is constant and we are moving around. So I'm going to say, I'll I'll just leave these where we thought they were before, 75 and 35. Apply and turn shading on in this view. Okay. Turn shadows, cast shadows. Okay. So I would like, as I rotate, see, that's got the sun. That has the light always coming from this same, yeah, that's got the light always coming from the same, always coming from over here. And I don't want that. So I want graphic display options, lighting. Right, we don't want it relative to view. 75. Apply. Okay. Oh, maybe I didn't do apply over here that last time out. Okay. Right, I want to keep that long shadow always aiming off that end of the building. So that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so here, then we go render in cloud. Just this little cheap, fast still image, just mostly that's just to get it uploaded so we can mess with it later on. And now that it's uploaded and rendered fast, we can re-render and select the turntable animation. Okay, I'm going to go pay for this. Let's do 36 frames. Okay. Okay, well, it turned out that what I did before was just render the image. Now I'm actually rendering the little animation. And it's costing me $12 or $30 or something to do. It's just money. Oh, yeah, we haven't done animations in Revit yet, have we? We'll do that. Walk through animations in Revit, because that's fun.